Thomas didn't expect the fall. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't climbing stairs. He was walking, in slippers he'd worn for 15 years. It wasn't the pain that stayed with him. It was the sound of the floor meeting him too quickly. Sometimes what carried us becomes what weakens us. Not because it turned against us, but because we forgot to notice how much we've changed. Shoes don't betray us. They simply stop adapting when we stop asking them to. Number 1, the forgotten soles. Thomas didn't notice the wear, not at first. The sneakers had been good to him, sturdy, familiar. He wore them through retirement, on his morning walks, through aisles of groceries and quiet afternoons in the garden with dirt under his nails and comfort under his feet. They were more than shoes. They were part of his rhythm. The kind you don't question until something shifts. The sole had thinned, but memory is thicker than rubber. The tread faded, but trust held on. Until the morning, the pavement didn't. It had rained. Light, steady rain. The kind that darkens concrete, but doesn't make you pause. He stepped off the curb, not quickly, not distracted, and the ground came too soon. No fracture, just a thud that echoed longer than it should have. He sat on the steps for a while, not from injury, but from something quieter. Realization. The shoes hadn't betrayed him. They'd just grown old in the same way he had, softened, loosened, changed shape without announcement. When he took them off that night, he noticed the heel tilted inward, the arch flattened. They hadn't fit for some time, but comfort, he realized, can be a kind of forgetting. He ran his thumb along the sole, felt the smooth patch where grip used to be, and in that moment, he wasn't angry. He was grateful for all the places they'd carried him, and a little ashamed that he hadn't asked sooner whether they still could. The next day, he left them by the door, not in the trash, just aside. Like a photograph you no longer display but can't quite throw away. Because some things don't leave you in pain. They just stop protecting you without meaning to. 2, the backless slide. Ruth liked things that didn't ask much of her. Soft chairs, quiet mornings, and the slippers by the bedroom door, backless, worn, familiar. She loved how easy they were. No bending, no fumbling. Just slide in and start the day. They made her feel light. Effortless, like age hadn't arrived in her feet yet. She never thought to question them. Why would she? They were gentle, comfortable, and they'd never given her a reason not to trust. Until the morning they did. She was carrying a mug of tea, the blue one with the chip in the rim she refused to throw away. It was early, still dim, her heel slipped, not far, just enough. Her toes reached for grip that wasn't there, and the floor rose to meet her. She didn't fall hard, but her wrist found the ground first. It wasn't the brace that unsettled her. It was the pause, the way she stood in that same spot days later and felt her legs hesitate. She had trusted those slippers like she trusted the hallway, the kettle, the ritual of carrying warmth toward a window. Now, the trust had a seam, a catch in the breath. She didn't throw them away. She placed them in a box beneath the bed, not out of anger, but out of respect. They had served her, but her body was asking for something else now, and she was finally listening. She bought new ones, not beautiful, but with backs, with grip, with invitation. And each morning, as she slips into them, she doesn't feel betrayed. She feels cared for. Sometimes safety isn't the absence of risk. It's the presence of support you no longer have to grip for. 3, the tight goodbye. Thomas hadn't worn the shoes in years. Polished leather, still shining, still proud in their shape. He'd kept them for weddings, for funerals, for reminders that he still had reason to dress. That day, his nephew was marrying a woman with wild laughter, and Thomas stood by the aisle, feeling elegant until he didn't. By the end of the ceremony, his feet were quiet, not sore, silent, like someone had closed the door from the inside. He thought it would pass. Shoes can pinch. That's what they do. But days later, he couldn't feel a stone in his sock. Then, he stepped on a toothpick and didn't flinch. Then, a cut that didn't sting but lingered. They called it neuropathy, named it gently, as if a diagnosis could soften what had already arrived. The shoes weren't to blame. They were who he had been. A man who moved through the world without hesitation, without swelling, without needing room. But he had outgrown them in silence, not in size, in softness. And softness doesn't fit inside stiffness without consequence. When he opened the closet weeks later, he didn't reach for them again. He just looked at what had once felt like strength, at what now felt like denial polished to a shine. He didn't throw them away, just left them there, as a memory he no longer had to wear. Sometimes harm doesn't come from what's sharp. It comes from what used to fit and no longer does. And healing begins the moment we stop trying to squeeze back in. 4. The flat betrayal. Janet always believed flat meant safe. No heels, no slope, no risk. Just her and the floor, nothing in between. She loved her flip-flops. Light, easy. They made her feel unburdened, like gravity was gentler in summer. She wore them from kitchen to garden, bathroom to porch. They made no sound, and perhaps that was the warning she never heard. The morning it happened wasn't dramatic. She stepped into the kitchen like always, carrying a bowl of blueberries and humming something without words. She didn't fall, not really. But one heel found the edge of a damp tile, and her foot slid just enough to take away choice. She landed softly, a slow, surprised kind of landing. Not hurt, but not steady either. She sat for a while, longer than she expected. And when she tried to rise, her knees spoke back in a voice she didn't recognize. That was when the silence changed. Not in the house, in her. She began noticing how often she stepped wide, how often she leaned toward the wall without knowing. She began questioning what she never had. Does softness always mean safety? Or had she mistaken ease for support? She placed the flip-flops in the hallway basket that evening, didn't throw them out, but she didn't wear them again. The next morning, she put on shoes with weight, with grip. Shoes that reminded her where her feet were. They weren't pretty, but neither was the doubt that had bloomed on her floor. Sometimes the things that move quietly can let us down the hardest. And sometimes the softest fall is the one that teaches you to walk differently. 5. The 3 zones of staying upright. Thomas used to believe one pair was enough. Good shoes were versatile, reliable, ready for all seasons and surfaces. He wore the same ones inside and out, from hallway to sidewalk, from errands to evening walks, until the small slips added up, until the ache in his arches lingered longer than it used to, until his confidence began arriving behind his steps instead of ahead of them. He didn't want to become someone with special shoes. He wasn't ready to admit that his feet had needs he hadn't met in years. But one afternoon, sitting on the edge of the bed, he reached down, touched the sole of his shoe, and felt how thin the trust had become. That week, he did something new, not grand, just honest. He bought 3 pairs, one for the home, soft, gripped, steady in silence. One for the world outside, wide, structured, kind to his arches. One for movement, light, breathable, tuned to the rhythm of longer walks. He didn't call them tools, he called them company. Each pair met him where he was, not where he had once been. They didn't make him faster, but they helped him feel less alone in his footing. Now, before stepping out, he pauses, asks himself, where am I going? And lets the answer choose which shoes will walk beside him. It's not about protection anymore. It's about partnership, about knowing his feet deserve more than memory. Because after 60, walking well isn't about performance, it's about respect. And Thomas walks not to prove he still can, but to remind himself that the ground is still a place he's welcome to meet. There's a grief that doesn't arrive with diagnosis or funerals or goodbyes. It arrives in the hallway you used to walk with confidence, now approached with hesitation. It settles in your soles the first time your foot slides just enough to make you pause. Not fall, not break, just pause. And in that pause, you feel it. The quiet truth that something once trusted has shifted. The slippers you wore for years now feel like questions. The kitchen floor, a little too smooth. The curve of the stair, a little too steep. No one warned you that grief could live in the space between steps. That a pair of shoes could become a stranger simply because your balance changed and no one told you to ask again. But it's not betrayal, it's transition. It's the body whispering, "I'm different now. Please meet me here." The hardest part isn't the adjustment. It's letting go of the idea that what once worked should always work, that your feet, your rhythm, your trust in the floor beneath you was supposed to stay the same forever. But nothing sacred stays unchanged, and there is no shame in realizing you need new support for an old journey. This grief doesn't want apology, it wants attention. And if you offer it, not pity, not regret, but presence, you may find that what felt like loss was just the next form of care. No one tells you that your feet speak first, before pain, before memory, before your voice can admit something feels off. They whisper through shifts, through hesitation, through the subtle way you brace before stepping onto tile. It doesn't scream, it nudges. Ask softly, "Are you still walking with me?" And for years, you may have answered without knowing, by staying loyal to what was familiar, by calling comfort enough, by wearing shoes that once fit the version of you no longer inhabit. But one day, you pause before tying the laces. You feel the edge of the insole against a part of your foot that now asks for space. And you realize, this isn't about aging, it's about noticing. The floor hasn't changed, the world hasn't turned mean. Your feet have simply grown wiser, and they want you to catch up. That's the moment. Not when you buy new shoes, not when you fall, but when you listen before harm teaches what stillness could have. You don't need special footwear. You don't need orthopedic anything. You just need a renewed relationship with the ground beneath you to ask, does this still serve me? And if the answer is no, you choose again. Not out of fear, but from tenderness. Because when the body feels heard, it softens. And when your feet feel safe, you don't have to throw anything away. Not the shoes, not the routines, not the body you've grown into, slowly, quietly, over time. You only have to listen. If one pair in your closet feels unsure, if the hallway seems longer than it used to, if your hand reaches for the wall before your foot touches the ground, that's not failure. That's your body asking to be noticed again. And you can answer without panic, without rushing to fix. Sometimes the answer is just one change, one new softness, one step in something that supports who you are now, not who you were. You don't have to walk faster. You don't have to be bold. You just have to walk with kindness toward your own stability, toward your own breath, toward the part of you that never stopped wanting to keep going, even if slowly, even if carefully, because the floor will still meet you. But how you arrive can change everything. Choose shoes that make you feel returned to. Choose steps that don't make your legs brace. Choose presence over pride. And if tomorrow you forget, that's okay. The body remembers. It remembers how to forgive, how to ask again, how to guide you back into the shape of your own story. And we'll be here too, not ahead, not behind, just beside you. Until next time, take one softer step and take care of your story.